Have you ever dreamed of embarking on a road trip that spans over 1,000 miles of untamed wilderness, breathtaking landscapes, and jaw-dropping vistas? If so, then you should really add the Alaska Highway to your list. Also known as the Alcan, this road travels through British Columbia and the Yukon before arriving in Alaska. We did the drive over 6 days and fell in love with the rugged beauty that is constantly on display on this route. In this video, we wanted to share 20 of our favorite stops along the Alaska Highway so that you can begin planning your journey. Let's jump into it, and there's an ebook with a map of all of these spots in the description. Of course, the first thing you must see on the Alaska Highway is the Mile Zero sign. This iconic sign has been photographed by travelers for decades and is the official start of the 1,400-mile journey, which provides the only real access to Alaska from the lower 48. Bring your patience, as there's always a lot of people wanting a photo of this spot, but it's definitely worth taking the time to see.
Our next recommendation is Kiskatinaw Bridge. The historic Kiskatinaw Bridge is about 30 kilometers north of Dawson Creek, British Columbia. Built in 1942-43 by the U.S. Public Roads Administration to replace the original timber trestle, the bridge is a curved timber truss structure about 360 feet in length. At the time it was built, it was the first curved wooden bridge in Canada, and you could still see it, but you just can't drive on it anymore.
Next up is the Fort Nelson Heritage Museum. We visited a lot of museums on the Alaska Highway, but this was probably my personal favorite. It's a cornucopia of Alaska and Canada history, with everything from old buildings and construction equipment to wildlife displays and classic cars. I recommend a good hour to take it all in, and be sure to talk to the docents here, as they're very knowledgeable and happy to share what they know with you.
Our fourth recommendation is the Tetsa River Lodge for cinnamon rolls. They are self-described as the cinnamon bun center of the galactic coaster. Tetsa River Lodge Campground has been in operation for about 40 years, and Ben and Gail Andrews are the third generation to continue this legacy. In spite of upgrades and changes over the years, their cinnamon rolls are what put them on the map and continue to do so.
Following that, we have Summit Lake. Summit Lake is located in Stone Mountain Provincial Park, which is one of the most stunning parts of the Alaska Highway. This lake has a turquoise color that stretches out in front of you and is surrounded by massive mountains on both sides. The lake also has one of the most beautiful campgrounds I saw on the drive, and if you have some time to stay and hike around here, I'm sure you won't regret it. Plus, it's right next to the highest point on the Alaska Highway, which is also cool to see.
Next up is Muncho Lake. I can hardly say the name without being excited at how beautiful it was. Muncho Lake Provincial Park is in British Columbia, and it's on the Alaskan Highway as it travels through the Canadian Rockies west of Fort Nelson. The incredible mountains, wildlife, wildflowers are just some of the wonders to see. Muncho comes from the local Kaska name meaning big water, but the lake is simply gorgeous as you travel along Highway 97. It's about 7.5 miles long and is definitely a highlight along the Alaska Highway.
Following that, we have the Liard River Hot Springs. These hot springs have been welcoming tired travelers for decades to bathe in their warm waters. This is the second largest natural hot springs in Canada, and for how remote it is, it still welcomes a lot of people each year. This area feels very wild, with waterfalls of boiling water coming out from the hanging gardens and the occasional moose or bear sighting along the trail. Hopefully the weather's a little cooler when you visit than it was for us.
Our next recommendation is the Signpost Forest, located in the small town of Watson Lake. People have been posting signs and signposts there for over 80 years now. In 1942, a U.S. soldier, Carl Lindley, was staying in Watson Lake recovering from an injury when an officer directed him to repair the directional outposts. He ended up adding a sign pointing to his hometown of Danville, Illinois. Other people picked up on that idea, and by 1990, the 10,000th sign was added by a couple in Ohio. Today, they estimate there's over 100,000 signs in the forest, including ours.
Following that, we have Rancheria Falls. Rancheria Falls features a short trail to a nice, small waterfall. While it's not as impressive as many of the other things on this list, it is a particularly remote and barren stretch of the highway, so it's a great spot to get out and stretch your legs on the drive. The trail is easy and relaxing, but do watch out for mosquitoes. We ran into a decent amount of them when we were here. We were unsure if it was actually wheelchair accessible, but it definitely could be, as there was an elevated boardwalk for most of the hike.
Our next recommendation is the George Johnson Museum. Obviously, there's a significant First Nation history long before the Alaska Highway was ever constructed. The town of Teslin is a remote outpost where the Tlingit people lived off the land. George Johnson was a respected Tlingit leader, photographer, trapper, and entrepreneur. The museum tells of his and the area's unique Yukon history, including his 1928 Chevrolet, which he used to hunt and as a taxi taking people through a then roadless territory. The displays include Tlingit native regalia and rare local photographs. You can also visit an original 1940s air radio building and exhibit there.
Next up, we have the Car Cross Detour. If you have the time, then this is a great detour on the Alaska Highway. We did this drive during our 24 Hours in Whitehorse video that you can see in the description, but you can add it to your drive. The road will take you down to the historic town of Carcross, which is fun to walk around for an hour and has lots of historic buildings. Then on the way to Whitehorse, you will drive by the world's smallest desert and Emerald Lake. Both of these are amazing spots with beautiful natural wonders to explore.
One of my absolute favorite stops along the route was Miles Canyon. Gold Rush prospectors used it as the main thoroughfare when traveling north during the Gold Rush. At that time, Yukon River traffic was so heavy and dangerous with rapids, and hence the city's name of Whitehorse, that the mounted police set up upriver outposts checking boats to ensure their safety. In 1922, the 85-foot-long suspension bridge was built across the narrowest and arguably most beautiful part of the canyon. In 1957-58, the Whitehorse Power Dam was built, creating Schwatka Lake and raising the water levels through Miles Canyon about 33 feet, which mellowed the once treacherous passage.
Next up, I recommend the city of Whitehorse. Whitehorse is a great place to spend an entire day in if you have the time to dedicate to it on your drive. As the capital of the Yukon, this city has a lot to offer, including amazing history museums, the iconic SS Klondike paddle wheeler, miles of trails to walk along the Yukon River, and great restaurants. Again, you can see a full video we made on this city if you're interested, but we really did enjoy spending some time in Whitehorse while on the Alcan.
Another one of my favorite historic spots was Soldiers Summit. Soldiers Summit is located at historic milepost 1061 within the Kluane National Park and Reserve. Opened in 1992, it is reached by a 1-kilometer walking trail. The summit is dedicated to a ceremony that took place on the 20th of November 1942 after almost a year of accelerated construction, resulting in the completion of the initial rough road from Dawson Creek, British Columbia to Alaska, which was about 1,500 miles. It was a huge highlight for me to walk the original road and reflect on the history while overlooking the gorgeous Kluane Lake.
Next up, we want to talk a little bit about Kluane National Park as a whole. This national park is one of 38 in Canada and part of a larger US and Canada park that has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's actually the largest UNESCO World Heritage Site. This park has a lot of hiking trails you can explore, but the best way to truly get a feel for how massive it is to take a flight sea that gets you up in the air to see the park from above. I got to do this one morning on our drive, and it was easily one of my favorite things I did on the entire Alaska Highway. Some of the landscapes you see from up there will take your breath away and will leave you in complete awe.
Number 16 on our list is the Kluane Museum of Natural History. The Kluane Museum of Natural History offers world-class wildlife exhibits. Also displayed are native clothing, tools, and weapons of the Southern Tutchone people, as well as minerals and gemstones that are found in the Yukon area. But be sure to watch in the parking lot for the world's largest gold pan located next to the museum.
Next up, we have the international border. After days or even weeks of driving to get here, it can be pretty surreal to see the international border come into view. Before you cross over into Alaska, you can get out and take a photo with the sign, see the international border marker, and read more information about both countries. It's a short stop, but it's one that you won't want to miss a photo opportunity at on this road trip.
Our 18th recommendation is Mukluk Land. The town of Tok is sometimes referred to as the gateway to Alaska. And just outside of Tok is Mukluk Land, which is also called the most Alaskan place in Alaska. Mukluks are soft boots made of animal skin traditionally worn by Native Alaskans. But Atlas Obscura describes Mukluk Land as, quote, a junkyard made over as an amusement park. Mukluk Land features a hodgepodge of busted fire engines, snow machines, a Santa Claus rocket ship on wheels, whack-a-mole, cotton candy, a doll mausoleum, mini golf, gold panning, an outhouse collection, and a skee ball alley, as well as the world's largest mukluk. Mukluk Land was created in 1985 by George and Beth Jacobs to house George's many eccentric collections.
Plus, it's a great place to beat pops and whack-a-mole if you get there.
Never happened. I don't remember that.
Alright, our second to last recommendation is the end of the road sign and also Sullivan Roadhouse. I just wanted to specifically mention the end of the road in Delta Junction. This sign mimics the one you saw at the beginning of the drive, and it's a perfect culmination of your journey. The small museum here doesn't really have a lot of information on the highway, but it's worth going over to the Sullivan Roadhouse, which is right across the street. This roadhouse was a historic stop along the trail from Fairbanks to Valdez back before roads were even built. If you want to learn more about Alaska history, you definitely don't want to miss the Sullivan Roadhouse, and be sure to grab a great photo at the end of the roadside.
Our last recommendation is the wildlife. Obviously, if you've ever traveled in this part of the world, a top attraction was all the wildlife you saw. And we saw so many bears, black and grizzlies, and lots of bison, a couple of moose, and even caribou treated us to a visit at times. It was always a surprise when we saw the animals, but it was always worth stopping to enjoy them.
So there you have it, our top stops along the Alaska Highway. If you want to learn more about the route, you can watch our full road trip video, check out our tips video, or purchase the ebook, which has a map of all the stops that we did along the drive, and you can see links to everything that I just talked about in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.